a lumbar vertebrae. The lumbar vertebrae are the five lower vertebrae. These are for their weight bearing, more weight bearing than anything else. And the spinous process here is generally described as being hatchet shaped. It's much more massive and it's not downward sloping like this one. Also, the lumbar vertebrae always have a very big vertebral body. You can see just the difference in this weight bearing body versus one that just forms the sort of middle of the back. So there are easy ways to tell these vertebrae apart. So they all have something in common, but they have a few things that they don't share in common as well. Let me skip this for a I'm trying to find a good slide to show you this thing about the pedicle and the lamina. Maybe this will work. Okay. So here's the vertebral body, and this little connection right here, and this little connection right here. They're actually showing it as the vertebral arch, but really this line ought to be more over here, right, in this portion. But this little area of bone right here, and this little area of bone here, which, as I was saying, kind of looks like it attaches this back part to the front part. This area here and this area here is the pedicle, right? And all vertebrae, have pedicles, right? So it's kind of the place where things look like they're attached. This is the spinous process here, and there's sort of a flattish area of bone here, and a flattish area of bone here on either sort of side, if you will, of the spinous process. That's called the lamina. And I know I've got some slides that show it a little better, but that kind of gives you an idea of where those things are. So that works. On this one, you can see they've actually, here's the vertebral body, and this is where the cord comes through. This is the pedicle. You can see here they're calling this an inferior articular facet. What you can't really see is up here there's also a superior articular facet. So I want you to understand this. So this is the inferior articular facet, which means that this facet is going to articulate or form a joint with the next vertebrae down, whatever that might be. Let's say this is L1, and the next one down is lumbar 1. The next one down is L2. Right? Well, the inferior articular facet of L1 will articulate with the superior articular facet of L2, because L2 is going to kind of nudge itself right onto this. So there's always superior articular facets on all the vertebrae, whether they're cervical or lumbar or thoracic. So that's kind of something you'll see tonight. Pedicle. Lamina would be here and here. And again, they're showing you this. Oh, okay. Actually, I'm glad I noticed this, because this is going to cause trouble. Because I don't like to do this. What's the difference? Oh, this is a good slide. Okay. What's the difference between an inferior articular facet and an inferior articular process? Because you're going to ask me tonight, where's the process, where's the facet? Now I'm going to explain it. All right. Now, this sort of right here, this round sort of flat surface right here is a facet. It's where things kind of slide together, right? It's a facet. Now, the facet is on a raised portion of bone, right? You see how this thing kind of comes out, it's sort of raised away from the vertebrae. The facet is on a little raised portion of bone. This little raised area of bone right here is the process. Now, I think I've made this correction in the study guide, because I used to have like processes and facets in there. I don't think I do the processes anymore. I just ask you to find the facets. But then somebody always say, well, where's the process? Well, the process is just a piece of bone that the facet is on. And the facet is where the vertebrae will stack together. So that's the difference. The process is just a little raised piece of bone. So here's the pedicle, right here. This would be back here, this would be the L-A-M-I-N-A, the lamina. So here and here. It's a spinous process. And then the vertebrae also have little wings that come out to the side. And this thing here, it's called a transverse process. And those are things that the vertebrae all have in common. So that's just kind of the architecture of the vertebrae when it comes right down to it. Now, because I think it's going to be the next slide, I mentioned that all vertebrae have something called a vertebral body, which is just a big like block of bone. There's actually one that doesn't. And I think it's the next one you're going to see, because we're going to talk about the cervical vertebrae. And like C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, C7. The first cervical vertebrae, C1, which has a name, we'll get to it in just a second. Actually, C1 doesn't have a body. It's just kind of like a little round sort of thing of bone. It's missing its body. But it turns out the body does show up. It shows up. This is pretty cool in anatomy. The missing body of C1, we found it. It showed up. It actually is part of C2. So it is missing, but it does show up in the second cervical vertebrae. You'll see that in just